Hello, guys. It's your girl, Mrs. Mwadi Kenya, again. For the returning viewers, welcome back. And for the new subscribers, Asanteni Sana. Thank you so much. I can see we are heading to 1,000 subscribers. So if you haven't yet, please subscribe. So today we are making some homemade pizza. And what we start with is activating some yeast. So there I've just put my warm water. I'm going to add sugar, which acts as food for the yeast. Yes, the yeast needs something to feed on so that it can be activated. And now I'm going to stir the water. This makes the yeast activation work faster. You won't have to wait for 5 minutes for you to start seeing the difference in the yeast appearance. It will work as fast as a minute. Okay, so after I stir, I make sure I leave some sugar at the bottom just to make sure that the yeast will be fully activated. So now here I'm adding my yeast. I only need 1 teaspoon of yeast. Yeah, I made a mistake and stirred the yeast. You're not supposed to stir it because, as I said, it's living organisms. So it got stuck on the spoon. I had to add it manually. So yeah, so as I said, 1 minute later, this is what happened. Already the yeast is eating the sugar and it's already activated. This was 1 minute later. I had not even left the station. So yeah, so this is how it looks. Around 2 minutes later, we can even see the bubbles. This is going to be fire pizza dough because the yeast makes all the difference. So this is how the yeast looked like around 5 minutes later. So this is what we are going to use on our dough to make sure that our pizza is nice and soft. So now I am not going to knead the dough physically using my hands only because I'm trying to save time. It's a Sunday evening and my kids are going to school tomorrow. So this pizza needs to be ready as soon as possible. Right now, it's already like 6 p.m. I started cooking late, so I'm trying to just speed things up. So here, I'm adding flour. So I'm using the all-purpose flour. And because I'm going to make 2 pizzas, I'm going to use 2 cupfuls of flour. So the first thing I do after activating the yeast separately, I'm going to add the dry ingredients first, just like I did with my mandazi video. If you haven't watched it, please look for the video. It's on my videos, on my channel, that is. So I'm going to just add the dry ingredients first. So I've started with the flour and next I'm going to add 1 teaspoon of salt. And next I'm going to add some sugar. So some people don't add sugar, but I prefer to do so that the dough is not like imbalanced in terms of taste. And also so that the yeast can still get more food. So the doubling of the dough will be faster and better. Yeah, so write those tips down as we continue. So now I am going to add some oil. Oil is important because it helps the dough to keep in the moisture. Once I add my water and I need it, it will be able to keep in the moisture inside because I'm still going to apply oil outside, but this will help the inside of the dough. So now let's add our yeasts combination, our yeasts. I had no sugar left at the bottom. It ate all the sugar. And I realized that this mixture was not enough to make my dough sticky enough. So I just decided to add some warm water before I started kneading. So yeah, so after this, we'll just knead and just enjoy the video. I will get back in a few minutes. So now my pizza dough is almost ready. The good thing with pizza dough is that you can hardly over knead it, meaning you see when you're making cake, if you over knead it, the cake becomes chewy and it will have a weird texture. But when it comes to pizza, the more chewy it is, the better. So now my dough is almost ready. It's not to the consistency of my liking because it's a bit too sticky. So I decided to knead it manually. I am going to start with putting some flour on the kitchen counter so that when I put my dough on it, it does not stick. Now I'm going to just do as you can see on the screen. And next I will pull the dough against on the side against me and pull it back in as if I'm making a ball. So I will do this until the dough is still a bit sticky, meaning it has enough moisture, but it's not too sticky that it transfers to my hands. Then the next thing I'll do is I will keep it aside in a warm area and leave it to rest for an hour. I hope you're enjoying the video so far. Please, if you haven't subscribed, please pause the video and do so. So now that my dough is ready, I'm just going to smear some oil to the surface where I'm going to be putting my dough in to rest for an hour. So the reason I'm doing this is because I need to smear the oil all around the dough just to maintain moisture. One thing with pizza, you always have to maintain the dough moisture. Otherwise, you'll have a very dry and cracky pizza outcome. So this is 1 hour later. The dough has doubled in size. So for pizza, you always have to let it rest twice so that it can double in size twice, if that makes sense. So in essence, it's like you're doubling. Okay, yeah, you get the gist. So now I'm just going to cut it into 2 equal parts, almost equal parts, because I haven't weighed my dough. I'm just doing this manually. I'm just cutting it until my ancestors tell me that is equal. So the reason I'm doing this is now I'm going to store them in different containers. Of course, I'm going to cover the containers or the surfaces just to make sure the moisture is not lost, as I said before. And another thing, I always see people who make pizza covering their dough with wet clothing. I don't think that's very necessary as long as you don't allow air to enter where your dough is. So now that that part is done, let us make our toppings, or rather prepare our toppings. I will start with my chicken. So today I am making barbecue pizza. I was looking for the easiest kind of pizza to make. So I just bought some barbecue sauce from the supermarket and I marinated my chicken in the barbecue sauce. I also added some salt and pepper. I set it aside for more than an hour in the fridge. And now I'm going to fry it. I'm frying it in small batches so that it does not boil. I want it to fry instead, but I also don't want it to be too crispy, if you get the gist. So the reason I'm doing it in small batches is because if you do it in bigger batches, it will remove the moisture the moisture that's inside the chicken, and it will instead boil. So it will take you longer to achieve the outcome that's intended here. So next we go to our cheese. So for the people who are going to be trying this recipe, or for the people who love making their own pizzas, one tip is never buy the ready grated cheese from the supermarkets because it has a lot of weight, so it doesn't melt as well as this fresh cheese. Secondly, always put your cheese in the fridge before grating. This ensures that the cheese does not smear on the grater, so it gives you an easier time to deal with it as you're grating, and the cheese will come out perfectly, as you will see in this video. So next we are going to prepare the mushrooms. These are fresh mushrooms from the supermarkets. I normally use button mushrooms, but today I decided to try this brand. Anyway, this is how our chicken looks like. Very juicy, very tasty, and also a bit crispy. So back to our mushrooms. I have washed just one portion because, as I said, I am going to make 2 pizzas. So I have divided the mushrooms into almost half because I knew I wouldn't use so much mushrooms. So a bit less than half. This is a bit less than half of that packet, which I think will be enough. I'm cutting them in big portions because I don't want them to disappear in the pizza. I want to be able to taste this mushroom as well as the other ingredients in the pizza. Another ingredient is onions for the first pizza, just to give the pizza a bit of flavor. I feel like it's too plain. It's going to be too plain. But for the onions, I'm cutting them into long but thin slices so I can be able to separate them on the pizza, just to make sure that my kids will eat them, because you know kids with onions. Most kids don't like onions, especially these onions will not even brown. So yeah, so that's why I'm cutting them this way. So guys, I want to remind you again, if you haven't subscribed, please do so. And if you have already, thank you. Thank you so much for supporting this channel. It motivates me to bring you more and more videos. So Now I am going to make the sauce. This is the barbecue sauce I was talking about. I don't like sweet food. So I chose this smoky taste, smoky flavor for a reason because it's not sweet. It's barbecue like smoky. So I'm going to use the barbecue sauce. I'm putting in quite a bit of it, hoping it will be able to serve both pizzas. But if it doesn't, I still have a lot of sauce left. Next, I am going to go in with mixed herbs. And finally, I am going to use some black pepper. I did not put salt in this sauce because I had already put salt in the chicken when I was marinating it, and I'm thinking that's enough salt. If anyone needs more salt, they'll be able to add it for themselves. So this is the outcome of the sauce. Now let's look at our dough. This is one portion of the dough. You can see it's doubled, it's redoubled in size. And so now we are going to shape it into a pizza. What is it called? Roll it. We are going to roll it. First, we go in with some flour. Make sure you don't put too much flour because it will affect your pizza. Then I am going to get my rolling pin and I am going to go in. So one thing is my pan is not circular, so the shape does not really matter. My pan is rectangular. Yeah, rectangular. And as you can see, the dough is nice and soft. As I'm rolling, if you're keen enough, you will notice that there are some bubbles forming. Those are air bubbles. That shows you that the dough rose enough. And it's perfectly risen. So this will give us a soft pizza with some air bubbles, which will make it chewy but still soft. I hope you can spot the bubbles. So if you're going to follow this recipe, look out for the bubbles in your dough. So now we oil the tray. I am using my cooking brush to ensure that the oil is evenly applied on the tray. This makes sure that the dough does not stick on the tray while cooking. And next, I am going to put my dough on the tray. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that the dough is sloppy on the edges. This helps me with ensuring that the sauce from the dough does not smear all over the pan and go under the dough. And also it makes sure that the toppings, the cheese and everything else does not go under the dough, because this will be a problem. This will make the dough soggy underneath and it will be harder for me to remove it from the tray. So you want the bottom of your dough to cook into a crispy brown dough. That will be very easy to transfer from this tray to any other surface for either cooling or serving. Next, I'm going to go in with my fork to make holes. These holes are meant to ensure that there is sufficient air circulation while the dough is cooking, while the pizza is cooking. Otherwise, you'll have an inflated pizza, which will be quite weird. So you can use any sharp surface, be it toothpicks, be it skewers, any clean sharp surface that you have. But I prefer the fork because it makes several holes at one go, so it makes my work way easier. So now let's top our dough. So the first thing you want to start with is the sauce. Ensuring that the sauce is evenly applied onto the dough is a very important step, as this ensures that the pizza has consistent flavor all through, and also the toppings will be held in place. You'll see the reason. You'll see the difference at the end of it, because I decided to make two pizzas in two different ways. The first one, I followed this step by step by putting the base as the sauce first. Then I topped it with some cheese and the toppings, and that was it. But for the next pizza, I put the cheese, the toppings, and all. Then I added the sauce and some cheese on top, and you will be able to see the difference after this. So now let's go for our cheese. Make sure that the cheese is evenly spread throughout the dough. You want all slices to be cheesy, to be tasty, and all the toppings to be held in place. So cheese is not only for the flavor, but also to hold all the toppings in place as it melts. Yeah. So next we are going to go in with our big chunks of mushrooms. Ooh, these turned out to be very delicious. You should always put big chunks of mushrooms on your pizza. So the reason I went with it first is because I didn't want it to burn on top. I wanted the chicken to come after, because the chicken is quite juicy. So I really wanted to taste these mushrooms, because as I mentioned, it was my first time. And lastly, we are going to go in with our chicken. So the chicken was quite hot, that's why I'm handling it in that way. But I just had to ensure that the chicken was evenly distributed throughout the pizza, because that's the main reason we make our own pizza anyway, to make sure that you have the most amount of toppings, the best flavors, and the biggest slices. Yeah. So lastly, for this first pizza, let's do the onions. And as I said, this is just for flavorings. Here, I'm trying to separate the layers of the onions, just to make sure that for the most part, the onion is just one layer each, so that my kids can be able to eat, as I said, because my kids don't really like onions. I think most kids don't like eating onions, tomatoes, green peppers, and what have you in food. So I'm trying to do it in a way that both children in the house and adults can enjoy this pizza. So yeah, so that was the final topping, and now my oven is already well heat. I put it at 240 degrees Celsius. Yeah, I know that's quite high, but first I put it on the second lower level, just to make sure that it cooks at the bottom. Then later I put it at the second top layer. So this is how it turned out. It turned out really well. Wow. Everything was cooked to perfection and the base was perfect. So this is the second pizza I had spoken about. I did the things in reverse. I put the sauce after the toppings, and I also added some cheese on top. I put the cheese both below the toppings and on top of the toppings, but the difference was I did not put the sauce below the toppings. So this is how I put it in the oven, in the same way I did it with the first one. So I put it on the second bottom layer, just to ensure it's cooked below, and on the top, the second top layer after, just to make sure it's cooked above. So this is the first pizza. This is how you dry your pizza. You always use the rack. Don't use an enclosed surface, because the air still needs to circulate. So this is the rack, the oven rack. It's raised well, so the air is circulating. So this is how the second pizza turned out. It looks a bit sloppy, a bit too sloppy for my liking, and cutting it was more difficult than the first one because, as I said, the sauce was in between the toppings and the last cheese, so it did not hold. Anyway, this is how the pizza turned out. My family members really enjoyed. I hope you try this. I'll see you next time. Subscribe, subscribe, subscribe. Bye.